Some viewers may find the following video disturbing. Viewer discretion is advised.
While doctors were coming from all over the countryside to assist the lead physician with the declining condition of Hisashi Ouchi, it's around this time that the medical team at that point in time would decide that the next course of action would actually be to take the breathing apparatus out of his mouth and inject him with a breathing tube. Now, with him being put on a breathing tube to help him regulate his lungs and breathe, he would not be able to speak. So it is around that time, the medical team, not knowing what the condition would be, to issue the family inside so they could actually speak to him, as in they had feared that this may be the last actual time they would get to speak to Hisashi, which I'm so glad that they did this, and the family would actually have this shining light of a moment with Hisashi. So they would start issuing his family in one at a time, his parents, his sister, his brother-in-law, and his wife. I don't think his wife allowed their 3-year-old son to see him. I think she allowed to see him once during the entire time. It may have been this time. It actually may have been this time. I'm not for sure. But I think the wife did not let their son see him but only one time, and you honestly can't really blame her, being that she did not want their son's last memories of their father suffering the way he was. So I am not sure on if it was this time or not. My apologies. But it is said that his parents, his brother-in-law, and his sister would be extremely emotional, and they would be speaking, and just there would be a lot of crying going on. That is, except for one person. And that one person would actually be his wife. It's said that the entire time that she went in and talked to Hisashi and spent time with him whenever, visiting times were allowed, she was always there by his side, and every single time she was always smiling, she was always positive, and didn't show any emotion whatsoever. And she would later say the reason she did this was that she wanted her husband to be strong and wanted him to keep fighting, and had thought that if she showed any sign of weakness, of emotion, of breaking, that it just would not give him the strength to keep fighting. So she was always a pleasance to be around. And as I had said before, should be noted on just how strong she was as a person, as a woman, and we will be getting into her later on. But I just wanted to say that, she would be so pleasant around Hisashi, and anytime that she was speaking with the nurses, all she would ever talk about is just her and Hisashi's love story. She would talk a lot about how they met and just their marriage, their family life, and having their son. When you read about these two people, you really see that these two people honestly adored each other. And it's just so tragic that such a happy, strong couple would have to go through something so tragic. After, of course, that they would say their last words to Hisashi and they would attach him to the breathing tube, it is there the lead physician would actually do something that you don't really see a lot. It's around this time that he would take all the furniture out of the Hisashi's room, and he would start putting newer furniture in there, and he would just put brighter colors in there and more beds and stuff so the entire family could be with Hisashi during this whole ordeal. He would, sanitize everything he would bring in to make sure it was clean, including the furniture, and he would actually start bringing in radios for Hisashi around this time. He would sanitize the radios, and it's around the time that his entire family would start playing a lot of his favorite songs on a consistent loop. They would just, if they were not playing his favorite songs, they would be playing nature sounds, considering he was a really big fan of nature. And he would just be they were trying to make his ordeal at the hospital about as comfortable as possible. And it can't be noted enough just about how much the medical team went above and beyond for Hisashi. It's around this time that Hisashi's results from the stem cell transplant would actually come into. And as I had said before, I'm not really sure if I had spoke about it, that his white blood cell count had actually gotten from 800 all the way down to 100, and his lymph nodes count would actually go from a 9% to a 1%. So his immune system was bottoming down really fast. And it's around this time that his white blood cell count would go from a 100 to an 8,000. And that lymph node count would actually go from a 1% to a 20%. So this was really a high five for the medical team, as it was a step in the right direction. And for once, Hisashi looked like he was starting to get an immune system and that things were starting to go really well. So this was a gleaming light for not just Hisashi, but the entire medical team. As this would be a really, like I said, a great step for the team, as now the most radioactive man in history now had a decent immune system to start fighting back the radioactive sickness that was soon to come. There is one thing they would not do in Hisashi's room, and that is they would never turn on the TV, because as I noted before, that his entire situation was being aired all over the media. So every single night around this time, there would be somebody on a news station not just talking about the tragedy that had happened at the Takamura facility, but they would also be talking about Hisashi. And I don't think I have to express why they weren't playing the news station, as we've all watched the news before, and typically it's never positive news. And so they were consistently going and telling people all the time, it's a real shame what happened to Hisashi, and just would adamantly just talk about, well, he's definitely not going to survive this. And they really wanted to avoid that, as they were trying to make Hisashi feel as positive as possible, because any kind of negative influence could really damper all their efforts in trying to save his life. And this would be, like I said, a really ray of hope for Hisashi and the team. That is, unfortunately, until they would take another look at the micrograph to kind of see how the chromosomes were attaching to Hisashi's cells. And it's there that the doctors would find something that made them very puzzled. And a lot of them would be scratching their heads, as they would look into this graph. They would realize that his sister's cells that had just been transplanted into Hisashi, about 10% of those cells were actually damaged from radiation. And this was a very unfortunate news for the team, and it really puzzled them, because for a lot of people, if you're not aware, like, radiation just doesn't set in your body and affect newer cells, as this has never happened before. And to be noted, Hisashi was hit with a neutron ray, and in order for those cells to be damaged, his sister's cells would have to be damaged with radiation in order for that to happen. Well, obviously she wasn't around any radiation, and from those cells, it was almost as if the radiation had just attacked them. And to make it a better kind of an example, it would be equivalent to if someone had gotten pew-pewed with a shotgun or something. Like, it would be like taking out that body part that was shot, and then as soon as you would do a transplant of a new organ, automatically that organ getting the same pew-pew wound. It just made no sense for the doctors, and unfortunately this was just a big kick in the gut for the victory that they had just succeeded. And it's there that things would start getting very, very much worse for Hisashi, especially when they would start doing a deeper dive into his organs and finding out that the radioactivity was far from done.